turned around and went back to Wellington. Patrick, hi.
Oh, good morning, Kerry. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good. Hey, yeah, just calling to have a bit of a chat about this situation with Fonterra. So, yeah, I work for Minerals West Coast, which is an industry association, and some of our members are coal miners and that sort of stuff. So I heard this news at 5 o'clock this morning, and I have had a bit of a look at Fonterra's announcements, that sort of stuff, and I don't know what the long-term plan is, but fundamentally I can't see why the government needed to get involved with taxpayers' money in the first place.
Given that they were doing it anyway.
Well, it's either, the government's involvement has to either be harmful or useless. Useless insofar as Fonterra may have otherwise done it anyway, or harmful if they're paying Fonterra to do something that its owners otherwise wouldn't have wanted to do with taxpayers' money. And, Labor's the party of Labor, but I think they should change their name to Capital, because they've been doing a lot of subsidising capital lately. And, if you actually look at the hard numbers, to my mind, Fonterra turns over about $20 billion a year, and they've been given a subsidy of $90 million for a capital project, which doesn't even work out to 0.5% of their turnover. Now, if they can't go to their bankers or their shareholders to find support for that, I'm wondering why the government's involved at all.
To show willing, perhaps, to say, we're all in this together. Your good fortunes keep this country afloat. Without you, we'd be stuffed. So here's 90 mil to say thanks.
Oh, yeah, it's a hell of a birthday card, I suppose. But I can't. The other thing that worries me is I can't see that it's going to work, because for context, there's no natural gas in the South Island, which powers most of Fonterra's plants and other industrial plants in the North Island. So when the oil and gas ban comes home to roost, I don't know what the North Island's going to do. That's almost as pressing a problem as the coal issue is in the South Island. But in the South Island, there's no alternative for coal, and the only alternatives that get put forward are electricity and biomass. And in 2019, I've just got this submission from Fonterra in front of me. They told a branch of MB that they looked at electrifying their Edendale plant, but found it would be $160 million in capital expenditure, and it would put the operating cost, not the energy bill, the operating cost for that plant up by 50%. And then a couple of years later, they told the Climate Change Commission that they'd ruled out electrification for any of their boilers, and that the conversion would be contingent on biomass supply, but the country will not have enough biomass to meet the needs of switching away from coal, and especially not gas, largely because most of the biomass this country has with forestry is concentrated in the North Island. So there's this commitment, as far as I can tell, with taxpayers' money through Giddy and the government, and then Fonterra saying they're going to throw hundreds of millions of dollars at it, but it doesn't actually say how they're going to do it. And that how is a very, very important detail. And I would have thought that would have been borne out before you committed $90 million into, I presume, research and development. But, yeah.
They've already got $790 million budget to reach their decarbonisation goal. So they obviously have a plan, Fonterra. I trust Fonterra to know what they're doing more than the government.
Yeah, well, I've sort of become fairly cynical of this, and I've sort of come to trust a lot of the corporate leadership in this country to tell the government what they want to hear, to try and retrospectively justify some of the commitments that the government's made on a policy front. And a lot of this stuff focuses on coal, and one thing that I would just try and, make known to people, coal, chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim shiroo. It's associated with Mary Poppins and the Industrial Revolution. It's got a horrible reputation, and it does globally account for a lot of emissions. But in New Zealand, coal only accounts for 7% of our total emissions. About 50% comes from agriculture, largely methane, and then to some extent nitrous oxide. And look, I live on the West Coast. We need dairy farming, and there needs to be a way of processing that product and getting it to market. I'm not knocking agriculture in any way, shape or form. It's impossible to produce animal proteins without some emissions of methane due to how ruminant digestive systems work and that sort of stuff. But then after that, you've got 20 to 25% of the country's emissions come from oil and transport fuels. And then we've got 7% of the country's emissions that come from coal. So, and all of which is paid for through the emissions trading scheme as well. So it just seems to me to be this particular target that the government's singled out, because it's a lot easier to think that they can sell politically, shutting down a few coal mines on the west coast, or Southland, or maybe having a few dairy factories close if they can't find a viable conversion, than it is to say to 3 million New Zealanders, "Oh, your car's going to be out of reach sometime soon." And we've actually seen that already anyway. The government tries to keep fuel as cheap as possible. They put Commerce Commission inquiries into getting fuel cheaper at the pump. They take the excise tax off, and now they might have to ramp it back up again to pay for the deficit on the road and all that sort of stuff. So,
which is exactly what they're going to do. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So
where does the coal go that the working coal mines extract from the West Coast?
From the West Coast and also from elsewhere in New Zealand.
Yeah,
the main
true.
market, the big three, if you like, are NZ Steel, Genesis Energy's Huntly Power Plant, which is 51% government owned, by the way, and they're happy to make a fair bit of money out of selling that electricity back to us as the Crown. And then you've got Fonterra, and then to a lesser extent you've got meatworks and freezing works throughout the country, again, predominantly the South Island, hothouses that grow vegetables throughout the year, and then the smaller sort of side of it would be space heating for universities, schools, hospitals, things like that.
So it's all domestic. Yeah. You don't export it.
Coal that's used as a source of energy is used domestically, but we export the stuff that is used for making steel. So it's a different product for a different market, basically. So it's as necessary as iron ore for producing steel. So you can sort of think of high-grade coal that we export as an ingredient for steel, whereas the energy that's used domestically, that is, you're selling energy, effectively. I mean, it's conveniently been forgotten now, but along with our nurses and our supermarket workers, coal miners never took a day off through lockdown, because coal was an essential service through the COVID-19 lockdowns, because it was essential for running the country and all of the industry that relies on it. So, it seems to have been a short few years, and that seems to have been forgotten, but hey, there we are.
At least you've righted the record. Thank you so much, Patrick. It is 8 to 12.